Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another month episode of Gemcutting Conversations. My name is Justin K. Prim, and I'm going to be your host for tonight and for the rest of your life, maybe if we keep on COVIDing forever. I feel like every month I probably always say I'm so excited to have this guest here today. And once again, I am really excited. Every month I am excited to have these guests and talk to gem cutters from around the world. It's been so far, I think, an incredible journey. I hope if you've been here this whole time, I hope you felt the same. You know, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is our 8th month of talking to gem cutters. And of course, last year we were talking to a little bit of everybody. So we talked to some gem cutters last year too, but I thought for season 2 of, World of Webinars, I was just going to give some space to the gem cutters of the world and try to talk to a gem cutter from every country that I've ever found a gem cutter in. So I'm very happy to have Lisa here tonight. I think she might be one of maybe 3 or 4 gem cutters I know in Canada. And yeah, as I said, I'm excited to have her here. She's got some good stories and some cool stuff to say. Welcome, Lisa. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing pretty well.
So, I was just going to say that we met. I think we met in Tucson. I
I
know.
think
I remember exactly where we met. It was a gemology online dinner, and I
that's right.
and I didn't really know who you were at that time. I mean, I knew you were a gem cutter, but I hadn't seen you on social media, only on that forum, so I didn't see your stones or have any idea about who you were. And I think you must have had a pretty good. I mean, I must have taken a good impression of you that night. Like you were kind of like a sparky, funny person that, I remember the following times that I went to Tucson, and I was definitely like, I want to run into you again. And I feel like we've run into each other maybe
A
for
bunch of times.
3
Yeah.
different Tucsons or something. But so yeah, I always like running into you, and I always like
Yeah. And I came to your talk because I'm a medievalist by training, by academic training. So it's always really interesting to me.
I did not know that. And I went to your talk because I just really wanted to know what you were going to talk about at the Tucson
Oh,
show,
the
the
frolic.
club.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, we
Oh,
were.
great. Now everybody's going to be calling me Sparky.
Yeah, okay, it's true. And then we both ran into each other at Rex's talk, and we were
That's right.
we were like the Mystery Science Theater 3000 with the side comments or whatever. So yeah, that was like the moment before it all went down, and we didn't know about COVID yet.
We didn't know yet. No. We knew
Well,
something was going out, but we didn't know what it was going to do.
yeah. So you're here. Where are you? Tell us
I
where
am
you're at.
in Port Moody, BC, which is just outside Vancouver.
Okay. So yeah, we were just saying you're just what 3 hours north of Seattle
Of Seattle. Yeah.
for anyone who doesn't know their Canadian geography. I've only ever been to Canada once, and it was just to Niagara Falls, just across, really just across the
Doesn't
border.
count.
No, I know, but we have to plan to come next year, maybe on both sides. I want to go up to Montreal, and then maybe I'll come up and see you and get a little dose of Canada. I know
Yeah.
we have another Canadian in the audience. My friend
There's at least
Brian.
three. There's at least three.
Yeah.
So
Do you know Brian and Melanie?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they were here for a while, and they're from Canada, or I think they're in Canada.
Skip the middle bits of Canada. Brian is not wrong.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. We'll just skip through. We'll just fly on over. So anyway, Lisa, tell us how are you? Who are you? Why are you here?
Why am I here? Um, it was a long and winding road because didn't start cutting gems until I was well into my 40s and I had a different career and I started as a hobby. Um, but I absolutely fell in love with it. And I, the plan was always to take early retirement, so I did. And I had to start, I was saying, well, I retired this year. And people were like, wow, you look great for 60. I'm like, screw you, I'm 45. And so I had to start saying, well, I started a different career. Now I'm almost 60, but I still think I look good for 60. And
I wouldn't have guessed 60.
the
45.
the
You're still going.
the So it was one of those hobbies that I was able to turn into a business and have found a way to make it work, and that I still really like it. Because the problem with turning your hobbies into a business is you lose your hobby.
Yeah.
And this is still fun for me.
Yeah. So what were you doing? What was your other career? What were you doing before you were a gem cutter?
I was a director of engineering for Sun Microsystems. I ran a $22 million software consulting group for Sun that handled the engineering side. So there was a sales side and there was an engineering side, and I handled the engineering side. I had been one of the people on the hardware side who went out and designed things for insurance companies and banks and set them up for mostly large data warehouses. And then I started managing a group of people who did security software and identity management software for Sun. So they were the senior architects running around designing things and running projects. And that was a lot of fun. It let us live all over the world. We lived in Zurich for 5 years. Tom had a very similar job to mine, but like a level up. And so we lived in the New York area, we lived in Switzerland. And then the problem was it was super stressful. Like I had chronic bronchitis and was sick all the time and was away all the time. And we looked and we thought, we have enough. We don't need more, which in the tech world, particularly at that time, more was more.
Yeah.
And, I had colleagues who had 10-car garages and we always were, the German words Bescheid. We were always pretty comfortable with what we had. So we had a comfy house and we had comfy cars, and our money went to travel. And when I was looking at how do I get out of this hamster wheel of running this firm and making a lot of money, it was okay, well, what the thing that's really important to us is travel. And I was cutting gems as a hobby. If I did that as a business, I could write off a lot of my travel.
Mm-hmm.
And gem countries are good bird countries and they're good scuba diving countries. And so it was really that started. I didn't have much of an intention to have a working gem business. I had an intention of a way to kind of make my hobby pay for the travel we wanted to do anyway.
Yeah. So, okay, just thinking about you as an engineer becoming a gem cutter, do you think was there something in the analytical part of your mind that worked well with gems? I mean, with gem design and the orientation of geometry and stuff like that, or nothing to do with each other?
I don't know how much they are to do with each other, but I had, previous hobbies included woodworking. Tom and I made most of the furniture in the house. I put myself through university as a carpenter. I built houses. And I
Cool.
was the tiniest, butchest carpenter on the site. But I was also a hand weaver. And, you'll see I still got a loom. I did a lot of hand weaving. As I started to get promoted, I stopped doing things. So when I was still designing, I stood up at a whiteboard and I created things, or at
Mhm.
least I created the ideas of things. And then they said, well, she's really good at creating the ideas of things. And so we'll make her in charge of groups. And then we'll make her in charge of people. And it becomes all politics and phone calls.
Mm.
And so hand weaving and later gem cutting gave me a thing that I could go, I made that. Because I'd get finished with my day at work and I couldn't point to anything I'd done.
Yeah.
Like everything I'd done was sit on phone calls, idiot wrangling. And I could go and I could work at the loom or I could cut a gem and I could go, okay, I did that. It's a physical thing. It's pretty. I can hold it. I created it. So it was more about that than it was about, was I being analytical? It was really about, could I make something that I could hold and touch?
Okay. Okay. Side question, because you're not the first weaver who's a gem cutter that I've met either. What do you think? Is there an association between pattern
There
work of
is.
weaving and
There
pattern work?
is. By the time I sit down to cut a gem, I have made all the decisions I'm going to make unless something goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
So while I'm cutting, it's very meditative.
Okay.
I have to pay attention. I can't let my mind wander or I will mess up, but I'm not making any decisions. And weaving is the same thing. Once you're set up, once you've done that work, and I use a computer assisted loom. So once I've done my programming of the patterns, I've set up my warp, I'm good to go. It's meditative. I can just leave enough of my brain going to do the physical work,
Mm-hmm.
and I can relax. So I think that we're woodworking. You have to keep thinking all the time because you'll do it wrong.
Yeah.
Um, I have tripped over my own feet walking if I'm being too meditative, but I can sit and I can just cut a gem. And again, unless I come into an inclusion I didn't find, or I got my geometry wrong, or something else happened, I don't really have to think about it.
Yeah.
I did my thinking.
I heard a story a couple of years ago of somebody who was in one of the lapidary clubs in northern England, and she was telling me everybody in the club was knitting and cutting as a group. Like
Yeah.
they'd go into the lapidary club and they would all cut around on the, like they cut their 8 mains, and then they would all stop and knit,
I freaking love
a
that.
row or whatever, and then they'd go
I love
back
that.
and do she was like, and they all did it. I was just like,
I
wow,
love it.
this
There's
is
an international organization called Stitch and Bitch
okay.
that literally is groups of people who meet to do knitting and needlework and crocheting
Yeah,
together. But I love that idea.
there was a knitting. So when I lived in San Francisco, I was working at a restaurant, and right next to that restaurant there was a knitting supply store that also had some classes, and the ladies in there were like, I don't know if they were like trying to get political with their knitting, but they were like they would like knit bomb stuff. Have you ever heard of this? Well,
Yeah.
they'll just cover something outside, like a bike,
One woman
wow,
covered a tank.
a
She
tank.
actually knit a tank cozy as a war protest. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I love this idea because it's like you don't think about knitting politically, but I guess anything can go to war if you need to. Okay,
Absolutely.
and
And never underestimate the power of old ladies. They're fierce. They're fierce.
I don't. I mean, the grandmothers of the world, powerful. Um, so you were transitioning from tech
I was.
to gem
And
cutting.
it was completely accidental. We I finally had enough money to buy some jewelry because I lived quite poor. Like I always had a place to live, but I was food insecure. My heat got turned off a lot. I lived pretty poor. And then I bought a house at 23, well, my first tiny little house, because I'm like, I want to be secure. So, a lifetime of saving and scrimping, and I found out I can afford some jewelry. I have a pretty good job, but I could wear some jewelry. Um, but I didn't know anything about it. And we were in Prague for work and wandered into an antique store. And there was a beautiful station necklace in what they said was 14 karat gold with sapphires. And I loved it, but it was €1,000. And I'm going, it's an antique store in Eastern Europe. I have no way to know whether these are sapphires or not. I have no way to know if they're gold or not. And Tom and I walked out of the store and I'm going, I wonder if there's a way I could know that. Like, is it even possible that I could walk into a shop and be able to know that? So I hit up my friend Google. This was in 2001. And I found a place in Montreux that taught gemology and gem cutting and jewelry making. And I didn't have 3 days to take the gemology class because I was working full time. But the gem cutting class was one day. So I took off a day of work. I got up at 5 in the morning. I drove down to the south of Switzerland. I walked out 10 hours later with a 10 millimeter round brilliant danburite that I'd cut. I'm like, I'm going to do this. This is so cool. I really want to do this. And that's what started it.
Okay.
And so I built this kind of fantasy life in my head because the job was unbelievably stressful, like really chronic illness level stressful. And so I would sit on conference calls and I would practice gem pickups. I had tweezers and I had my little gems. I started buying rough. I would go down to Montreux and I would demo for Hubert when he did gem shows and things and just be on the machine. Emily, I sold that round brilliant danburite. It was actually I had to put together enough gems to take out to a client and I threw it in there and it was the first gem I cut and it's the first gem I sold.
Wow.
So,
That's kind
but
of a random gem to be the first one, a Danburite.
yeah, but I just started doing it, and I created this fantasy in my head because we already knew we were going to leave Switzerland and go to Canada. Like, I'm going to be a gem cutter in Vancouver. I'm going to be a gem cutter in Vancouver. I'm going to be a gem cutter in Vancouver, because it got me out of this situation where I just felt like I was under siege all the time by corporate politics. And that's pretty much what I did. Uh, Tom retired when we left Switzerland the end of 2004 and moved to Seattle while we were waiting for our Canadian residence permits. I transferred my job. I took a different job within the company, moved to Seattle, and got set up there with a faceting machine and got set up with the basis of the workshop. Tom had already retired, and being Tom, he decided that if I was going to do this thing even as a hobby, because I was clearly already throwing a bunch of money and time at it, I needed to be organized. I am not organized. I'm organized by marriage. We literally have a folder that's Tom labeled unknown filing hole. And if I'm not sure where a piece of paper goes, it goes into unknown filing hole so it can be correctly filed later. So he decided that the thing to do was build me a database. And that's what he did. He created a database. I think I owned about 50 pieces of rough at the time and 2 or 3 cut gems. And he didn't know anything about the gem business. And honestly, I didn't either. So he created this thing, and now it's got over 2,000 designs in it. It's got my invoicing system. It's got my full inventory. It holds all our pictures. But he was really fierce about, if you buy something, it goes in the system. You can't, and he was doing all my photographs at the time. So he's like, I will not photograph anything unless it's in the database. You have to give me a database inventory number, and then I'll photograph it. And everything gets labeled, and everything gets bagged, and everything gets organized. So that was what he did for the couple of years while I was still working, and we got ourselves moved. And when we got up to Canada, the company, I mean, like a lot of tech companies were doing around that time, was starting to devolve. Mm-hmm. And it had really ceased to be any fun. And they were busy laying people off. And of course, they were laying off the people who did the work, not the management, which was insane. So we got our mortgage paid off. We had finished renovating the house. We did that for cash. We had no debt. And I kind of went, pick me, pick me, pick me. And I got to package out at 45. And I started looking for a jewelry job, because it didn't occur to me that I could actually, people would buy my gems in enough volume for me to make it worthwhile. So I figured I'd cut a little bit, and then I would go work a store. I'd do a counter job. I'd done that before. And I had a job offer, and they said, but you have to close your business because you can't work for us and have a jewelry business. We don't want somebody coming in suing us saying they think it's our thing because you made it. And Tom said, you don't need it. Like, you don't need the money. See if people buy your stuff. And I spent a few months, and I put together my first little box of about 50 gems. And I threw the danbarite in because it was really looking light. It did not fully fill the box. And I made appointments, and I took it out to a couple of jewelers in town, and I sold 5 gems and took commissions for a bunch more. I'm like, I think I can do this. I think I can make a business out of this. So it really was almost accidental. In fact, when we crossed the border, when you come across the border, when you move across the border, as you know, because you've moved across the border, you have to declare everything you have. So we emigrated to Canada. We came up in 5 trips. Tom had organized the main spreadsheet and then all the individual spreadsheets for each trip. So the last trip, I missed that man. The last trip, we brought up the gem rough, and we get to the border. We said, we got this and this, and he looks through. He goes, "What's this?" I said, "That's gem rough. I'm a hobby gem cutter." He said, "Ma'am, that's $50,000 worth of material. That is not a hobby. That is a business. You need to go into that building over there and get a business number." If I do? Yes, you have to import this as a business. I can't let you import this as an individual.
$50,000 worth of rough?
Yeah.
Oh, so he was looking at your invoices saying, this isn't.
He was looking, well, we had the list of what we were importing, and it was, clothes and shoes and kitchen stuff and rough. And he said, that's a business. So I literally had to walk over. I got on the white phone to Manitoba and got a GST number rather, and started a business. And it was like, oh, okay. So when Tom said, well, why don't you see if you can do anything with the business? I already had the business number. I'd had to do that to bring it in.
Okay.
but it was more accidental than intentional.
But it worked.
It worked. Still doing it.
Okay. So then, so you mentioned the database, but now I think anybody that has known you or that is on your mailing list, they've seen the sort of public extension of what this database looks like, right? Because this is how
Yeah,
you're building your
that's how I
data,
built a catalog.
your catalog. So this database ended up becoming a pretty big part of the way you guys were doing everything.
It is, and that's where I see a lot of people in any kind of business fall down, is they don't pay attention to the fact that it's a freaking business. And if you can't, like, I get this a lot. Somebody will call me and say, I've got a client coming in and they want to see pink sapphires. I said, great. While I'm on the phone with them, I can send them out a PDF of what I have in pink sapphires and maybe throw in some yellows or some redder things, or give them some tourmaline, or throw in some other options. I can do it at whatever keystone they want. So if they normally key it 3 times because their clients like to jerk around and negotiate, what keystone do you want? What currency do you want? Here's a mini catalog, and they have it while we're on the phone. Uh, that's been really important. I'm doing a gem event when we get off the phone here. I have an hour to kind of get my head around it. And I was able to send out a catalog of about 70 gems to my client, who sent them to her client, so people can select what they want to look at on the call. And I did that in Canadian dollars. So, and when I enter gems into the database, they go in with all the information about them, the rough I cut them from, the design, the photograph, any other information I need to be legit, like is it heat treated, how clear is it? And I click a box saying, is this a catalog item or not? Because not everything is. And then when I go to create a catalog, all I do is click a button that says create catalog. And it asks me if I want to do the found set. So if I've only been looking for pink sapphires, it just pulls what I found.
Mm-hmm.
Or it'll do everything that's clicked as catalog. And it's the matter of minutes. I can do the same thing with a gem certificate. I can create a certificate that I pull the gem ID in, I pull in the pictures, they're automatic. It's already got the design. I can add any other text that I want, and I've got a certificate of the gem with the rough, the gem, and the design.
Wow. So this is a really powerful tool. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're obviously this is like a secret weapon for you guys in terms of what's going on behind the scenes.
It pretty much is, and I haven't seen anything commercial that does this much, because it was custom designed for how I work
Mm-hmm.
and how my clients work. And we use FileMaker. Um, it's Apple's database software.
Yeah.
But Tom FileMaker is the underpinnings, and Tom built the system on top of it.
Yeah. So one thing that just popped into my mind, because I know, there's like a movement right now towards traceability and transparency. When you're going to various countries to buy rough, are you also keeping track of like who you're buying it from? And like if someone wanted some sort of transparent traceability of, your stones and where you, not in like who you got them from, but whatever traceability information they wanted, do you think your database will be useful in that way too? Like if you want to go in that direction?
It is. I certainly know who I've bought every piece from. I know where I bought it and when I bought it. So every piece that comes in, I know where I got it. One of the things that I've chosen to do, for a whole lot of reasons, I've built really powerful and important relationships in the countries where I buy gems. So if somebody in Kenya or Tanzania wants to work with me because I get somebody coming in, I tell them to go through the broker I work with there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that does a couple things for me. One is it makes sure that that person has business ongoing from me. I don't try to undercut them. I don't, I've seen people run around try to get a better deal over here or there. And, at the end of the day, yeah, maybe you save a little money, but building important relationships matters. And so I have 1 or 2 people in the countries I work with who tend to be my point people. And in many cases, they hold money for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a 16-gram piece of Mozambique Santa Maria aquamarine because my friend in Tanzania holds money for me and he bought it. Now, I don't know the person he got it from. And again, as you know, people bring things in from everywhere.
Yeah.
So in the sense of, going to the mines and working with the individual miners, Moyo Gems does a great job of that. They do a tremendous job. Stuart Poole
Yeah.
does a tremendous job. But they tend to buy more the output of mines, and they have a larger, I can't use a lot of the material that comes out of the smaller mines. I very much cherry pick my stuff, and that makes it tougher. I will buy things because it's the right thing to do at the moment, but it isn't how I buy and it isn't how I sell. I don't have that kind of volume. I do 300 gems a year, 400 gems a year. It doesn't make as much sense for me. So what I've chosen to do instead of kind of a blockchain traceability is work with people I trust in country and then funnel back money to organizations that help make the countries better. So I work with Young Strong Mothers Foundation. I work with SOS Children's Villages. I've done medical equipment for free clinics in Nigeria. We sponsor a bunch of kids in schools. That's the route I've chosen to take because it works best for my business.
Mm-hmm.
But I also find that the people I work with, I tend to select for the kinds of ethics I like. If I don't feel good about somebody's ethics, I might sell them something, but the odds are excellent I won't buy from them.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly won't work with them or travel with them. So I trust the people I buy from who broker for me. I trust that they're also paying fairly downstream. I also am often able to observe that because people will come to the office where I'm sitting with the person and I'll do direct negotiation. But I really am curious to see where some of the traceability goes because I think it's important.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about this. I mean, if we're following you on Facebook, we've definitely seen in the past travel photos and some of your stories. Tell us a little bit about some of the trips, because I know mini cutters are just staying local, but buying in Tucson or buying in a closer avenue, and you have gone really out into the bush to really get some of your stuff. So tell us a little bit about where you've been to since you made this switch into gem cutting.
Well, been to Madagascar, and that was a complete hoot because they locked down exports of gems while we were there. So
Okay.
it's like, oh, great, nothing comes out. That's so much fun. And I did actually bring some things out under cover of let's call it darkness. And I remember being in the airport. One of the people on the trip goes, "Oh yeah, I was just stuff in my bra." I'm like, and I got to the airport and I thought, that is a very stupid woman, and this is the stupidest decision I have ever made. And I am now a very stupid woman. I will never do this again. And I did make it home. But I'm like, I go legal. I'm really sorry. I am not cut out for doing the stupid. I will never do this again. That was a terrible idea. So I tend to go to places where there's enough infrastructure I can get stuff out. And I've found that Tanzania and Kenya have been really good for me. I have good relationships there. Because of those relationships, and again, like I will send money down. And I've had stuff come in, and somebody said, my friend there said, would you be interested in this 57 karat sapphire rough that somebody's got? I've seen pictures of it. It looks all right. And somebody gets on a bus and brings me the thing because my broker can say, yes, I know what she buys. Yes, I know she's got money because it's sitting in my account. Mm-hmm. So I've had access to material that I know for fact other people who work with the same broker don't have because they jerk them around and they don't have the money to buy it. The thing I will tell you, and I've watched people do this, I've seen a couple of friends get kind of hosed. We're going on a gem trip and you'll be able to buy things much more cheaply. And then what they don't realize is the guy leading the trip is charging 10 to 20% on everything, on the air you breathe. You're paying an uplift on the gems to them. You're paying an uplift on your hotel. You're paying an uplift on everything. And you still don't have a way to broker it out because they won't broker for you. So now you can't get more than $2,000 worth of stuff in the States. And it cost you $7,000 to be there on this gem trip. So it's a great vacation. Have a really good time. But you're not likely to find super stuff at the mines unless you're working through a broker, because anything good at the mines leaves almost as soon as it's found. So you go to the mine and you have a tremendous experience. And you buy some small things, you know, it's like Men in Black, just some diamonds for your children. You get some little things there. You meet some nice people, you eat some ugali. It's a good experience. But don't think you're going on a gem trip to buy things inexpensively. You're not. You are going to pay for everything you buy. And even for me, buying more direct and buying more carefully and having the relationships and being able to broker stuff out, what does it take to amortize the cost of being there? So you figure you've got your flights, you're staying somewhere, you're eating, you probably have a guide and driver, certainly you do if you're going out to the mines. You've got visas. When I travel, I bring anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 on a trip. That's what I need to be able to spend to figure that I'm amortizing my time and my travel costs.
Yeah.
If you're going with $5,000 or $6,000, you're going to have a terrific time. And if you're going with someone, and, you know, and I'm speaking particularly to people from the US or Canada, ensure that they will broker for you, because if they won't broker for you, they're ripping you off.
Yeah.
If they're telling you can buy there and they will not broker for you, they're ripping you off. You're going to have a great time and you're going to find some interesting things. And you may find some things you wouldn't find at Tucson.
Yeah.
You may not. You
Depending on.
probably overall will not pay any less for them than you would at Tucson. But it's a terrific experience.
Yeah. Well, a question just popped in the chat, which is exactly what I was thinking too, from Catherine Harrison. She was asking, how do you actually start developing those kind of personal relationships with people there, brokers and miners and whoever else? You know, how do you trust them in the first place?
You know, I met my broker in Tanzania through my teacher. So the first time I went to Tanzania was 2009. My teacher organizes trips twice a year in good times to Tanzania. And you'll meet some brokers there that he's kind of pre-screened. I met some people some Sri Lankan people in Tucson. And I visit them when I'm in Sri Lanka. It's a little bit like mushrooming. You know, if you go, where'd you find those morels? No one will tell you. Like they're not relationships people share. Where I buy my stuff is part of my business model, and the odds of me actually giving you a list of my brokers is like not going to happen. But going to Tucson is a pretty good way to start meeting people, because a lot of the people who are there will go to Tucson. Now, several of my people don't, but at least it's a place to start. There are some really great people who, you know, you meet on Facebook. There's some really great people. I give money back when people were able to travel. A friend of mine in Seattle, who's Nigerian, was traveling to Nigeria 2 or 3 times a year for his day job and buying gems at the mines. And, you know, this is a 5-carat new find aquamarine that I bought 200 grams of it 2 years before this is the first time this has ever been seen in the history of the world, came out in Gems and Gemology. I'm like, really? Because I'm wearing it. So just find a couple of people you like and trust, buy from them, and then see what they can offer. Maybe you can do a trip in country. Right now, nothing's particularly safe. Tanzania is locked down how they sell. So you can't buy the way I used to buy now. I was there in January 2020, and it was a completely different universe of how you can buy because of the way the government set it up. Sri Lanka, you can't export rough, but I buy cut to recut in Sri
Okay.
Lanka.
Yeah.
Um, so you just have to kind of get a feel for it. And it helps to like to travel. It helps to have an open mind. Like the place I stay in, Arusha, has a wood-fired pizza oven. And you sort of have to suspend your beliefs about pizza. But if you do that, it's delicious. It just doesn't really resemble pizza in some important ways. You know, the sauce is different, the cheese is different. We had ordered a pizza with artichokes on it, and it came with anchovies. And of course, it's and call the guy over, and they consult with the chef, and it turns out they were out of artichokes, so they substituted anchovies
Oh, okay.
because A. Um, so you really have to be very flexible and very relaxed and have an open mind. But there's an article on my website about buying rough overseas and ways to do it and things to think about that goes into a lot more depth about the issues you can encounter while you're doing that.
Okay.
But you know, how do you get your money in? Because you have to declare anything over $10,000. And believe me, 2 o'clock in the morning, standing at Kilimanjaro Airport, you do not want to be the short ladies saying, "Oh yes, I'm carrying $40,000." It's not a good life move.
Yeah.
So, how do you get your money in? Who do you work with? How do you get your gems out legally? How do you get them into your country legally? Um, are you a gemologist? Do you know what you're looking at? Because it is nobody's responsibility to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
Nobody's. It's your responsibility to know. And that can be very difficult for people coming out of a North American or European culture where they, you know, as a seller, I'm obligated to disclose. That is not true in a lot of the world. They're not obligated to disclose. You need to know.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I do with the database is I have a record of everything I've ever bought anywhere in the world. I have a record of everything I've ever sold. So I can go into a trip knowing what I need, what I've paid for it before, what I can sell it for. And I don't have to, because you don't want to look at a piece of paper when you're talking to somebody, you lose all credibility. Uh, I can very quickly memorize, these are the things I need, this is what I should be paying for it, because this is what I can sell it for. And I can look a lot more competent than I probably am.
So when you first started doing that, or maybe when you first started buying rough in general, whether it's overseas or locally, were you already buying on that level, or were you starting much on a smaller budget?
I started on a much smaller budget. I started on a very small budget. And, you know, I definitely had the box of bad decisions. Um, the, I really had a box of bad decisions. And one of the things that Tom did was because he started learning, because he was a research mathematician, and he started learning to do gem designs. And of course, he was not a gem cutter. He decided to start learning to do the designs and modeling them. And I wound up with a lot of dark sea tourmaline because, of course, I did. And he created a whole series of designs that make dark sea long crystal tourmaline look freaking fabulous. So, you know, lemons to lemonade. He figured out a way to make it work. I got taken under the wing of a now pretty much disgraced rough dealer and gem cutter, who said, "Oh yes, we will share this parcel." And what sharing the parcel meant was I paid for it, he cherry picked it, and I got the leftovers.
Mm.
But it took a while to know enough to know they were the leftovers, right? Like it was a while before that sunk in. So I definitely, you know, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment.
Yeah. So you had to learn,
So
you had to earn those.
I had to earn those, and my early years were filled with some bad judgment.
No, here in Bangkok, we hear a lot of stories like that because, so many people are coming here maybe for school or maybe just to kick their business off. And if they think they know what they're doing and they don't know what they're doing, the classic story is like, I brought my life savings and I went to Chantaberry and I got a I got a lot of synthetics and I'm not in gym business anymore.
Right.
Like I'm going back to whatever. So luckily you didn't make the biggest mistakes and you're
I
still
didn't make the
here.
biggest mistakes, and I was pretty careful about what I did and how I did it, and there are a few things that I just tossed in the garden, but most of it I was able to at least get my money out of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
So a lot of questions have popped up from that little story. So let me just go through a couple of them real
okay.
quick. So how did you learn how to do the exporting? Because obviously that's challenging and it's different in every country. How do you manage to figure that one out?
So that is one of the questions I ask before I go to a place is, all right, who's my contact there? And are they a broker or can they broker for me?
Right.
So if I can't get that working, if I don't have a person who can broker for me, that's not a country I can go to,
Hmm.
because I am unwilling to do the underboob export ever again. So I need to, and that's part of my preliminary setup is, how do I do this? How do I get it out? I have a broker in Washington State and I have a broker in Vancouver. And so when things come in, or I export things to the US, because when I sell out of the States or fly out of the States, I have to export to the US. I have brokers who do that for me. And it's not cheap, but it's part of the business.
Hmm. So for you, it's important. Everything's legal. Everything's on the book. You're not, as you said, stuffing stuff in
I
your
don't mess
glove.
around. I
Yeah.
don't mess around.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's good. Most of the people that I know that move around with, big value rough have told me time and again, don't mess with it because the first time you get caught, you're not going to be able to do that ever again because you're not going to be able to travel like that ever again. So just don't do it.
It's not worth
And
it.
yeah, especially, yeah, if it's your business, it's like, don't mess around with it.
Yeah.
So somebody asked, when you're traveling internationally to buy rough, what safety measures are you taking? I mean, you said you're going in there with quite a lot of money. I don't know if you're alone or if you've been traveling with other people, but even for anybody, traveling can be dangerous anyway.
Well, when I started traveling, I went in groups. And Madagascar was a group organized by a guy named Jim Fiebig, who is now passed. Tanzania, my first Tanzania trip was organized by Hubert Heldner, who was my gem teacher, who still organizes trips, and I highly recommend them. Um, Initially, I traveled to Tanzania. Sri Lanka was organized by Pauline Jameson from SGA. So start in a place with a group and then see if I can build things from there. Um, and honestly, I found that I'd like to go to some other places, but I do really well in Tanzania. I can get stuff from all over Africa. Sri
Hmm.
Lanka, I can get stuff from everywhere. Um, Madagascar became too weird and dangerous. It's not a thing. Um, but I do a couple of things. One is I don't dress like Dora the Explorer. Just don't do it. Um, the Tilly hat and the Columbia shirt, just don't. Um, Dress appropriate for the country, as if you were there like a normal freaking human being. Um, it goes a long way because you just don't stand out as, hi, I'm a tourist. Um, and again, before I go on my own, I always know who I'm going to see, what I'm going to do. I wire my money to Tanzania. Sri Lanka, I'm able to wire money after the fact before stuff ships out. So I'm not really carrying that much. I mean, I'm carrying $4,000 or $5,000. Sri Lanka, maybe, if I'm going with Tom, or if I was going with Tom, 10 to 15. But by and large, I'm not carrying vast sums of money. I've made arrangements to wire
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I used to travel with Tom until he got sick. And then we went back to Sri Lanka together, but he didn't go to Tanzania again after that. So what I wound up doing for Tanzania, I stopped traveling with the person I'd originally brought to Tanzania with me because his ethics were not my ethics, and I
Hmm.
wanted nothing to do with him anymore. You really get to see people in action when you see them in a place where they might feel superior. And if you're with somebody in a developing nation and they are clearly this and they're treating people like they're inferiors, it shows. And I want no part of that. But what I did a couple of times was I brought friends with me who were hobby gem cutters and said, great, come with me. I take you to my people. I will set you up on a trip afterwards. So, you're paying for the trip afterwards, but I'll send you out on safari and do the stuff I'm not going to do again. The trade-off is you donate X amount of money to a charity I support. I'm not going to charge you. I'm not uplifting the air you breathe. I'm not charging you anything for your gems, and I will export for you. So I'll export it with my stuff, and when it gets back to Canada, I will FedEx it to you. So I've done that a few times.
That's cool. I'm sure for them, that's like they'll never be able to do that on their own because
No,
many
you,
people
you,
would
you
not
wouldn't.
want to do that.
You wouldn't. You
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
And it's been super fun. And then I get some company, and I have fun. And the people I've gone with who are hobbyists have good eyes. They can spot stuff because you're getting I'm literally getting 3 or 4 kilos of rhodolites at a time at the desk, and having a couple of extra people who are really good pickers of stuff go through that is fun.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm just looking at the questions that are popping up. Are you using software to design? Are you doing GemCut Studio, or are you just doing it in your head, or how do you go
So
about it?
Tom was the designer. That's one of the things now. If anybody knows, I lost Tom in February. So I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I do a little Gemcut Studio,
Yeah.
but mostly he did my designs.
But you said you have like 1,000 designs in your database, right? So you have some to work with
Almost
already.
2,000, yeah.
Yeah. So
A
you,
bunch of which are Tom's. He went in and input everything. And when he input it, he did things like there's a button for dark sea tourmaline, so you can tag that. So if I want to search on things that are good for dark sea tourmaline, I can do that. If I want to search for things that lighten a gem or that darken a gem, I can do that. I can search on, I'm looking, I want something that's a baryon between 1.1 and 1.3 length width. I need something that is short because I have a shallow piece of rough. So I can search on any of those parameters
cool.
and get designs.
So that sounds awesome. I mean, just having that many designs in your database, I mean, at this point, maybe you don't need any more. You probably have something
Once in a
for
while, I see
everything.
something I really, really, really like that's outside because there are people coming up with really interesting new designs. And if I see that, I mean, I also am a techie, although I'm not quite as wizardly as the spouse. But I can input it. But I'm still kind of and fun fact about me, I am severely dyslexic.
Okay.
So I can do things once I have the muscle memory and the sort of brain geometry memory to do them. But it's really a struggle for me to work with geometries until I learn what I'm doing. I'm really good at looking at a piece of rough and going, ha, but working in GemCAD Studio, oh, fuck my life. I just, like, nothing works the way I want it to work. So it's going to take me a while to get my arms around it.
Okay. Who knows? Maybe you can just outsource that. You don't have to do every single thing, right?
Well, and one of the things that used to drive Tom nuts was he would create these beautiful, mathematically precise, modeled in 4 directions designs, and I would treat them as a series of helpful suggestions. And so, I do work a lot on the fly. I'm not Boyd Fox. There's a level of awesomeness of working without a map that I have not achieved. But a lot of my stuff looks mostly like the design,
Mm-hmm.
but it might not look exactly like the design because I'll get in and go, oh, I have something here I want to work around. I want to play with this. I can stretch it a little bit.
Yeah. So you have enough experience to, kind of adapt as you go, and you are adjusting in your mind a little bit, so you don't have to go into the
Absolutely.
software and start pulling
No,
stuff
no, no, no,
apart.
no. I very rarely go into the software. If I'm working on something super expensive, maybe yes. But if I'm working on my normal stuff, which is, I mean, that's a 5 carat aqua. My sweet spot for stuff is wholesale 500 to 1,000. So if I'm working on a normal piece like that, I'll just knock it out. I'm cutting for inventory.
Mhm.
I do not fill holes. If somebody comes to me with something, you cut something to fit this, I have no interest in that. I don't enjoy it.
Okay.
Look at my inventory. Does something fit your hole? Because metal moves a lot easier than rock. Thank you very much.
True.
Bend your metal to my rock. Um, but that, some people love that. They love the challenge of fit the bezel, and I don't.
Yeah.
So in general, I can cut what gives me pleasure to cut, and that's all I want to do.
Okay. So, okay, wow, a lot of questions are popping up. Business questions, which is, I guess, exactly what I sort of assumed would be interesting with this conversation. I haven't talked to any gem cutters who are talking about business on the level that you're talking about business. So we'll just roll with it.
Okay.
So what about your accounting and taxation in Canada? This is a specific question. Are you taxed on turnover or stones you sold?
I am taxed on the profit of my business.
So they're not
So
asking
what?
about specific stones. It's just a number at the end of the
Right.
year kind of a thing. Okay.
Exactly. So I bought this much stuff. That is not an expense if it's in my inventory. It's only an expense if I've sold it. So every year, and in the database, I can push a button and say, give me my inventory, and it gives me the amount I still have based on what I spent, not what it's worth. And that's my number.
Okay.
So if I spend 50 grand in a year and my inventory is up by 10 grand, then I've only sold 40 grand worth of stuff in that year. If my inventory is down by 20 grand or this. So when you buy a thing, it goes into your inventory and it's part of your assets.
Yeah.
You can't deduct the parcels that you buy. You can't deduct the rough that you buy. You can only deduct your cost of goods. So my accountant just does a business form, and I'm not incorporated because it isn't worth it to me to be incorporated. So it's just part of my normal taxes.
Okay.
And yeah, the accountant does it every year, and I track what was my inventory going in, what's my inventory going out. That's the difference. I don't
So
have to track the expense on each stone. I
yeah.
mean, I do, but for accounting, I don't.
So it's really no different than if you were selling anything. Like
It is
that could be telephones, or it could be, grains of bags of rice or whatever. Just you're
exactly.
buying something, you're selling it for
You're
more.
selling something, and what's the delta between your inventory at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, and how much you spent?
Yeah. Okay. So how do you go about finding new clients then if you're because you are constantly cutting and you have a lot of for anyone that's seen your mailing list, I am always shocked at how many stones one person has available. I'm just like, how is she doing this?
Um, so I started literally walking into jewelry stores, like, "Hello, this is me," with my little tray of stuff, and I'm polite enough to make appointments. But I went around and I did that. And like with my buying, what I found was I like having, if somebody treats me like a vendor, I don't want to work with them.
Hmm.
I don't treat my suppliers like vendors. I treat them like partners. Um, Several of my suppliers get bonuses at the end of the year if I do well because they're partners in the business. Um, I want goldsmiths and jewelers who treat me like a partner. And those are the people I work with. I don't, not everybody is my client. And it was very frustrating because people walk in like, well, not seeing the value of this over what I can get at Gem Connection. And no slam on Gem Connection. They've got nice stuff. But I want to work with the people who see what I bring them, which is not just the gems, although it is also the gems, but it's the story behind the gems. It's the ability to do the cataloging and to get them things quickly. Um, it's So I don't have a vast client base. I have a pretty big email list, but I don't have a vast client base. I have clients who know what I bring them and who I like as people. And one of the things that was really touching when Tom got sick in 2014, I had goldsmiths writing me saying, the big thing in your catalog, I think I'm going to do a competition piece. Can I get that? Or, because all they knew was that Tom was sick and I wasn't working. And they came in and they just started buying stuff from my inventory. And John Garso and Farouk Hashmi bought rough from me at the Frolic in North Carolina, not because they needed it, but because they knew Tom was sick and I wasn't working. And the that's why I say, like, the relationships in this community are everything. They're
Yeah.
everything. And it's very rare. The one year I didn't buy something from John at Tucson, I wrote him to apologize. I had to go home early because of some cancer stuff. Uh, I buy from the people who supported me, and I sell to the people who support me, and I take good care of people on all of those ends.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think you kind of just answered this question, but somebody had posed it, so I'll pose it to you, which is how have you developed the ethical sense of your business? And I think you kind of just told us you you work with people that you like, but is there more to it than that, or it's just a
well,
human thing?
partly it's a human thing, and partly I feel pretty strongly. So I'm a practicing Tibetan Buddhist. I have been for a very long time. Um, there are a couple of lay vows that you can take, and one of them is, I do not take things which are not freely given, and another is, I do not say things which are not true. Now, that doesn't mean I have to tell somebody 100% of what's going on in my life, but I don't say things which I don't believe to be true. And I'm the person at the counter going, oh, wait, you undercharged for that because that is not freely given.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring that into everything. Like, I don't want to do well at somebody else's expense. I don't want to, like, I don't win if somebody else loses. And that's just really core to who I am. I like mentoring new cutters. I'm not going to teach you how to cut because I have no patience with that. And I'm dyslexic and my brain's weird, and I'll going to send them to you. But I'm very happy to mentor new cutters. I've often taken people around Tucson and shown them around. I'll answer questions. I'll help with things. My rough box is always open. It's not free, but it's always open if somebody needs a piece. Um, but if you want a bigger piece of the pie, build a bigger pie. Just bake a bigger pie. Seriously, bake a bigger freaking pie.
Yeah.
Um, there is enough for everybody. I don't have to get something at somebody else's expense. And I find that for me, that's often the dividing line. When I saw the person I was traveling with, who I used to have a lot of respect for, just the kind of rejoicing in screwing somebody over because they got a little bit lower price. And I'm embarrassed to be standing next to you. Like, I want no part of this that isn't anything to do with how I want to work. And yeah, maybe I could make a little more, but I have enough. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
And I really, I like my clients. I like my suppliers. I like my friends in the industry. I like myself when I look in the mirror. And that's really where I want to be.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's important. It's kind of hard to, yeah, like you said, when you're with somebody or you see somebody or you realize one of your friends are those people that you don't really like the way that they're treating that person or they're doing that thing. And yeah, it can be really awkward.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so we got a couple of different questions, but I kind of want to point them into the same
Yeah.
direction. So somebody had asked about, is everything you're doing flat faceted or concave? And I know you do a little bit of both. And then
I
somebody
do a little bit of
asked,
both. I do a lot more flat than concave, but I do both.
and then I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about working with factories because I know you're also, you also work with cutters in other countries and
I do.
and some of the concave and stuff. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit because that's kind of interesting. Like, I mean, I find that interesting because that's one of my main parts of my business in Thailand. We work with a lot of factories here, and that's one of the awesome things about us being here. And I always thought, oh, if we move out of Thailand, maybe that we're going to lose that part of our business. So I was quite interested when you told me that you were working with factories overseas because I was like, oh, I didn't really think that I could pull it off, and you're pulling it off. So I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, so somebody I used to work with died. And one of the things they left was a small cutting house in Sri Lanka. And a couple of friends and I, Sherris Cotter Shank, who's an amazing human, and I went, they need some help. And Mike had set them up with Ultratechs and with a concave machine. I went, okay, because not gonna lie, I hate cutting concave quartz. I freaking hate cutting concave quartz. I don't like to cut quartz much anyway, but concave quartz, I freaking hate it. And people like it. So that's good. So I got in touch with these folks, and I had often gotten questions from people of, I just bought a parcel of topaz. Can you cut it for me? No, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just not doing that. A big part of my business model is I source the rough. So I'm not really charging an hourly fee that makes any kind of sense. I'm making my money on the rough as well as my cutting. So if you're supplying me with the rough, so I started working with them, and they do very good standard cuts, really super stuff. They rounds, ovals, squares, ashers, super good. So that's what I started doing for clients when they come in with a parcel of things, or one of my clients has a lot of more melee size stuff and they want 3 to 6 millimeter pieces cut mostly in rounds and ovals. I'm not going to do that. They will do that, but they do it on Ultratechs. They do it really well. And everybody gets a full wage. Everybody gets health insurance. Everybody has access to light. It's a nice shop. It's ethically run. I almost always buy all my tanzanite I cut and I recut it. These folks learned to cut my concaves, which was nice. So I could have them do my quartz, which means I can sell the quartz more affordably. And I also feel cutters in Sri Lanka are part of the gem economy. It's a gem producing nation. There have been cutters in Sri Lanka since there's been a Sri Lanka.
Right.
There's nothing freaking magical about me. The touch of my white hand is so much better. It's not. They do great work. So I cut the bulk of my stuff. My tiny little pairs, I probably didn't cut. If it's important to somebody, I will tell you whether I cut it or not. I'm never going to lie about that. But a lot of my concave quartzes, they were cut there. I prototyped them, and I'll still do some, but they cut them. And then people in a gem cutting country are getting a wage. And when I have them cut small things in my designs, they don't make it takes them a lot longer to cut one of my designs than it does to cut a standard round brilliant. Like, they have to think. Where with a standard round brilliant, they can knock out a bunch of those a day. So if they're cutting small things in my designs, I actually pay them with a minimum of a 5 carat. So you cut a 1 carat little piece for me, I'm going to pay you like you cut 5 carats, because then they get a good day's wage out of it. And that just seems fair to me.
And
I
they
said, I
don't,
want everybody to eat.
and so then they don't mind to take a little bit of extra time to do a little bit of a
Exactly,
better
because they're still
design.
getting paid well.
Yeah. No, that's great. It is interesting. I mean, I've kind of had a similar realization recently. We some of the factories that we work with here, we've been working for them now with them for like 2 or 3 years. And we're like friends now, like we don't
Yeah,
we don't like go out to
yeah.
eat together, but like we go and we sit down and we have tea and we talk about the stones that we're doing,
Mhm.
and like they've given me great advice that I've taken into my classes and stuff like that. And especially since COVID started, and you see like when people get hurt or when a company gets hurt because of this, and you're directly involved with that, like, or you can help them, like I have some friends that I don't really work with much, but they've got a factory in Sri Lanka as well. And the dude just emailed me at the beginning of COVID. He was like, if you have any customers for me. And I was just like, dude, I'm just going to put your contact info on Facebook and just put it out there, because I think what you guys are doing is awesome, and I don't work with you guys, but I visited you and I appreciate your guys' work, and if I can help at all, like
Yeah,
that's
I've been
great.
doing very much the same thing. I sent the people I work with bonuses at the end of the year because I started selling a bunch on Reddit, which was just a complete surprise and shock. And I actually had a very good year last year, and I was not paying to travel. So it's like, holy crap, this is not bad. So my suppliers and but they got bonuses because it was a good year. And I have just been, I have some friends in Sri Lanka who have just been sourcing cut sapphires for me for the last few months. And it's stuff that I probably wouldn't have bought before, but I get it home, I give it, I refer to as giving it a haircut, right? I clean up the girdle. I don't buy anything that's super wonky unless I can completely recut it. But some things I fully recut, some things I repolish the table and I clean up the girdle and I give it a haircut. But then they eat.
Mm.
They're not able to travel. Their shows got canceled. Their buyers aren't coming. Um, I don't have the kind of volume where I can keep them completely afloat, but at least I can throw some money there. It doesn't hurt me. Um, Maybe I'm down a little bit for the year, but I can afford to be down a little bit for the year on buying these things. And gems, the Tuscon Hoy, right? They don't eat any hay. They're not costing me anything to keep them. I don't have to feed them or take them to the vet. I can just keep them until somebody buys them or I recut them.
Yeah. So real quick, while we were still talking about concave, how do you communicate the designs to them? Do you have some kind of
I send
diagram?
them the design.
The
So the
design,
concaves, I send them one of the flat designs, I send them. The
like a
concaves, I send them a gem.
okay, so they just take the prototype and they look at it. So there's not really a because I think there's not really a good
My,
way.
my, my concaves are not super complex.
Okay.
Um, I have a polymetric. It's really nice. It does beep, 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 beep. So I I don't do fancy cutting.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing against it, but
It's just a different thing. It's a different
it's
world.
a different thing. And yeah, I'm really proud of you. You got a ball burr. Go you. It's just it's not a thing that appeals to me to do.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of don't. Um, I can do a little bit of hand carving and things if the mood strikes, and the mood rarely strikes. But my concaves are fairly simple, and I can send them a prototype or two, and they can figure it out from there.
Okay. And so with those guys, have you been involved at all with like helping them as far as like training goes, or they're already super skilled?
They're good cutters, but my polish and my meat points are better.
Yeah.
And I have worked with them, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to go there because cancer and COVID. But I've worked with them a lot on this is how I want things polished, and this is where my meat points need to be, and I'll send back things covered in Sharpie and pointing it out. Um, I had a
Back
client
to
who
Sri
was
Lanka. You're sending
back
that
to
back
Sri
to.
Lanka.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent him back to Sri Lanka to Sharpie. Let's talk and we'll point at things. But um, I bought them some new equipment, particularly to cut moissanite because I had a client doing moissanite recuts. I have bought them because if I'm going to say you need to do the polish to this quality, I better be able to say, and by the way, I will pay for the laps, right? Because that's really where it comes down. Is like, do they have the equipment?
Yeah.
And the for me, ordering a new lap is a couple $100. So I can do that. For them, ordering a new lap is a couple $100.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing. So
Yeah.
it's like, right, wire you the money, get some good laps because it's worth it to me to have the stuff done right.
Okay.
Um,
So are you
but
sending them like American laps, or they're buying local
no,
just
they're
for the?
buying laps
Okay.
there. Yeah. I've packed in laps to Tanzania for folks. When I go back, I'll see if they want me to pack in stuff to Sri Lanka. But shipping those things tends to work out poorly.
Okay. Just because of
Uh,
shipping.
just because of shipping. It's very expensive. They often don't arrive, um, or they don't arrive intact.
Yeah.
So I'll Sherpa stuff in, but generally, and if I specifically wanted them to use a gear loose lap or gear loose's sticks, I would do that. But it's one of the things they taught when they promoted me to manager. They sent me to manager school, and one of the things they just drilled into us was people don't really change that much. Most people don't. If you've got somebody who is not good at the job they're supposed to be doing, find out what they're good at and move them to that job. Don't expect them to really change, because most people don't change that much. And I found that to be a very, very good thing to remember in life, in marriage, in gem cutting. But why would I take people who, if they weren't good enough gem cutters to do what I wanted, I would not work with them.
Yeah.
They are. Why am I going to go into their place of business and say, you have to do it the way I want you to do it, when I can say you have to do it the way I want it done, and let them figure out what's available to them locally and how they can do the job, because they're professionals.
Yeah.
I say you have to use 60K diamond polish from Gear Loose because that's what I use. That's stupid. Not how they work. They don't have access to it. I need a polish of this quality. Yeah, they'll figure that out.
Yeah.
I'll help.
I've had quite similar experience working with tie cutters here, because they're using totally different types of laps, different metals than we do. They do things that don't even make sense to me, like they can get an amazing polish on amethyst on a copper lap with diamond. And I'm just like, how can you do that? That doesn't even make any sense. But they do, and it's really good.
If the result is what I want, I'm happy for them to get it the way they get it.
Yeah. So, and yeah, that's especially in Sri Lanka, they have all their own kind of tricks that would never make sense to us. And then they pull it off anyway.
But the arrogance of me saying, do it the way I do it.
Yeah. So, okay, we've had a couple of questions, and we mentioned laps. I think it's time to go into the studio and talk about nerdy tool stuff. See what you got going on in there.
Okay, let me do this.
So we're gonna switch over to Lisa's phone so she can walk around a little bit, and she's gonna take us into her workshop. I haven't even seen it yet, so I'm excited. I don't know where we're gonna go. It's like a dark dungeon.
Now you're just turning me on.
It's a bright dungeon. It's a well lit.
It's a clean, well lit space.
Yeah.
Oh, for freak's sake!
Is it not connecting?
It's giving me weirdness. Okay, let's try this again. We had it working. We turned it off because it was giving a lot of feedback.
Yeah, it was working. So we'll give you a minute. No problem. No worries. It will work eventually.
There we go. Okay. Join with video.
Okay, and I'm going to mute your computer. Okay, your phone should be audio working now. No, wait, keep your phone volume on, because I have your computer off, so we can still hear you when you walk away. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Okay, so this space is Tom's office. And you can see we have a lot of Lego. You're going to see a lot of Lego. I've got my main photography area over here.
Wait 1 second. The volume of your computer is going in. Maybe mute your computer real quick so we're not hearing the double. I muted your mic, but mute your speakers as well, or turn the volume down or whatever.
Okay. I'm getting out of this room.
Okay, that works too.
So the office is in the back. One of the reasons that we bought this house was it has this massive workshop. And so it arrived with a docking station. I have my second photo area, but I've got all of this wonderful storage and books. And there's Lego everywhere.
Okay.
I have a sauna because every workshop needs a sauna.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I've got the grinder space. We do have a full jewelry workshop.
Cool. Who's using that?
Soldering station. Tom.
Okay.
for heating. We've got the rolling mill. This is the lab. So I do have, this is my portal lab. So when I travel, I carry this little portal lab and everything tucks into it. And the nice thing is I can walk around with this thing zipped up and I don't look like I'm carrying a portal lab.
So this is what you're using to look at rough when you're traveling around?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Because somebody was asking me. So what's in the portal lab? Somebody had asked, what are you using?
Okay. So I have a refractometer, polariscope, dark field microscope, the little light that powers all of these, spectroscope, another spectroscope because no one can eat just one. Mm-hmm. I've got some filters. It's a
pretty complete kit.
It's a very complete kit. And I travel with these guys.
Is that
which are
polarized? Oh,
no, binocular loops.
Okay.
Yeah, binocular loops. And then I have a loom. So there was a hand weaver. So I have a computer assisted loom. I've got some stuff that I've woven. And then this is where I do the faceting. So Tom built me these really nice lap stands, and I have my cutting laps here and I have polishing laps there. I've got my Gem Master and I've got the polymetric that just moves over here. I have my little, this is a makeup thing from Bed Bath & Beyond, and it holds a lot of stuff. And
we have almost the exact same makeup holder for our.
They're the best.
Yeah,
they're the best. And I have my Manjushri, who is the Bodhisattva of wisdom, in my workshop in the hopes that I will be wise.
Okay, that's cool. Then, I've got a little Merlin above mine, so I think we're in similar company here.
And then I look out at the forest and I can see the water through the trees. I can look, I'm working.
Wow, so that's an inspiring view.
That's pretty much the shop.
Okay.
It's nice, it's large, it's comfortable. There's enough space for me to do my work.
And so, and I see you have, like many of us, you have quite a collection of laps. And are you mostly using like a few of the same, or sorry, I turned all your stuff off of your computer.
Oh, okay. Turn the stuff back on.
Yeah, you have to click OK. Okay. Somewhere it should say,
there we go.
Turn it back on. Perfect.
Okay.
There you go. Thanks for that little tour.
You only need 3 laps until you need 10 laps, has been my experience. So I cut a 48 carat, it finished at 48 carats apatite. It was a big blue apatite. Mm-hmm. That was a 10 lap stone. It was so bad that as I polished it, I actually had to keep notes of which lap polished which facets, and then go back over the entire stone, pavilion and then crown, with notes. And okay, now I have to switch to the tin with diamond and polish these 5 facets. And then I have to switch to the Greenway and polish these 2, because some laps would tear on one facet and polish another. And that was a 10 lap stone.
That's a nightmare
stone. Normally I am not one of God's little preformers. So I have friends who can sit down at the grinder and they get a perfect preform.
Yeah.
And I hate them. That's not a thing I do. So I tend to use quite a coarse lap to preform on the machine.
Okay.
And then I wind up, I just because, I mean, come on, laps are like porn. You just keep looking at new laps and you desire the new laps. So I just got a couple of hyper edges, and I've been using Adams's sintered, which are very good. Got a couple of hyper edges and I'm really liking those. But I'll normally cut on either a 600 centered or a 500 hyper edge. And then depending on the mood, so John Rolfe named the dominatrix for me, bless his little heart. And that is it's no surprise at all. That is, I can't understand it. That's my go-to. because like I said, I very often make on the fly choices about things, and being able to, nicely charged 3,000 on that outer rim, I can cut.
Yeah.
So if I have to do a little bit of, bring my meats in because I stretched the stone, I can do that on that lap and go straight to polish. I don't
Yeah.
have to take notes because I just cut and polish and cut and polish and cut and polish. I have to wipe things down well. I go through a lot of microfiber cloths, but I don't have to take notes of what I did. I just do it.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
actually since, I think not since COVID began, but since the year before COVID, I brought a dominatrix to Thailand with me. And when I
most people
just,
go to Thailand to find one.
well, no, when I just moved here, I had it sitting on my desk. I don't know why I did this. It was half off the desk and it just fell off onto the floor. It's the only time this has ever happened. And then it had a curve in it, like a very distinctive curve. And I talked to John. I was like, what can I do? He was like, well, you can put it between two other laps and see if it'll flatten out, and that worked, but it didn't. And it just sat there for like a year. And then finally, I found a lathe guy who re-lathed it for me and it was
Right.
fine again. And since then, on my handpiece machine, that has become my absolute favorite polishing lap because, with the handpiece,
If I lost that lap, I'd go out of business. I
yeah.
just
Well, with the handpiece, because we're, at least with me, I'm like fiddling around with the feet and the cheater so much. If I try to go to polishing lap after that, it's like I can't find the
right,
facets
you're
again.
lost.
So
So
that
yeah,
one
no,
is so
it's
fast.
it's fabulous, and so I've got a 3,000 bat, I've got a 60,000 BA5T, I've got, because I used to do some testing for John, and he just send me new stuff, so I have a lot of stuff. But yeah, a rough in lap, if I'm working on something big enough, 600 or a 500. If I'm working on something softer, I'll do the 1500 hyper edge because that it cuts it and I can go straight to polish on it.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I really like to do a pre-polish before a polish. Even if I
Okay.
can go straight to polish, I just feel it takes me longer and I'm not as happy with the results.
Yeah. Have you ever, just because we're talking about dual band laps, have you ever tried the Gear Loose, the dual band zinc one? I think it's called the Zinc Plus.
So yes, I find the zinc too harsh for me.
Okay.
Like where I'd use 3,000 on a bat, I want 8 or even 14 on a zinc.
Just because it's a little bit harder.
It's a little bit harsher. So I own a zinc somewhere, but it's not a lap I particularly use.
Okay.
Now, if somebody took my bat away, I would use a zinc. I just charge it with something finer, but
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. It's
Yeah.
just, it's not better than what I own.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of the Sri Lankan cutters that I know, they swear by zinc, and I'm always like, oh, I until recently
Zinc
never
is
even.
fast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Zinc
fast.
is
And I think that's what
fast.
in Sri Lankan
Yeah.
cutters pretty much like cutting fast as far as I've seen.
Yeah.
They love cutting fast. So, but I haven't tried that one. I've always been curious because now I'm like, ooh, dual band laps, please. Where are,
3,000 on zinc is a cutting lap.
yeah. Well, even the 3,000 on bats, it's pretty aggressive. I actually
It's
had to
pretty good.
switch. I was using, let me think. Yeah, I was using 3,000 on bat and it was so aggressive. I was overcutting all my meats. So I switched to 8,000 and I was like, oh, okay, I could slow the machine down, but instead I'll just change the grit.
Right.
And that worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I have my touch set up for 3,000 on bat, so I know what it does.
Yeah.
And then I switched to zinc and like,
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I totally feel you. When you're used to everything moving at a certain speed and then it doesn't, or if it moves too fast, that's bad.
it's
Because
like when I
then,
go back to Germany, I'm like, oh my God, I can't drive 200 anymore. Holy crap, I'm not used to this.
yeah.
I'm the one poking along at 130 in the slow lane.
Okay, so let me look at a couple of questions that we haven't got to yet in the Q&A. So let me think about what this question says. Can you talk about the main idea about your article about precious cutting? I'm not sure if they mean an article on your website or just
They would
general.
have to, I've written about 25 articles. You would have to narrow it down.
Okay, so maybe they'll come back with a clarification of that, but they want something. And then, okay, another question going back to when we were speaking about brokers, and if you are new, if you don't have brokers, but you want to start a gem cutting business, so this is a great question. Where would you buy rough? If you don't have brokers, you're not going to go overseas, assuming maybe that you're in America or in Europe or whatever. Where would you start?
Okay, that depends. So coming out of the tech industry with enough money to screw up without too much consequence, I could make a decision that what I wanted to do was cut from my own inventory and sell out of my own inventory. That's not a luxury most people have starting out because it is an expensive way to go. So the thing people go is, I want to cut gems. Great. What do you mean by that? How do you want to make money doing it? Because people, if you've got 25 gems you cut, you are probably not going to find 25 people who want exactly those gems.
Mm-hmm.
I have a wider inventory, and I've got stuff that's been sitting in my inventory since 2007, right? This just never moved. It's one of the things I sometimes have to explain to my suppliers is, yeah, I'm not paying 50% of what I'm eventually going to sell it for because I'm paying you today and I could be holding it for years. Like it's a different equation. So how do you want to be a gem cutter? Because the best way to be a gem cutter if you're starting out and you're new is go to your local pawn shop, spend a couple $100 on a whack ton of colored stones they've pulled out of things, and go home and practice repairing them. Because if you don't have 100 grand to throw into rough for inventory and a year of your life to spend cutting it before you even find a client, it took me 3 years to make money in cash in, cash out. I was 3 years in the red on a cash basis, not on an accrual basis. So I wasn't paying my bills. All I was doing was putting money into the business for 3 years. And then my first profit was $300. Excuse me, $600 in year 3.
But you could kind of chalk that up to that was your education, right? You had to
That
learn
was
how
my
to
education.
be a gem cutter.
But I could afford to do that. If you can't afford to do that, you need to figure out different ways to get into the business. And repairs and recuts, people always need them.
Yeah.
If you can go in with confidence to a jeweler and show them before and after pictures of the stuff that you pulled out of the pawn shop, you will have more work than you can handle, and you can probably charge $50 an hour for the work, assuming that you're fast. I had a very unhappy discussion a number of years ago with someone, a cutter out of Colorado, who thinks he's a professional, who actually told me that I personally was destroying his business because I didn't charge enough for my gems. I'm like, huh? Because I charge based on gem guide. Like I charge standard wholesale and I uplift that for retail, and I'm charging pretty much standard rates. He couldn't afford decent rough. He was buying, if you take 5 hours to cut a 2-carat red garnet, you are not going to get money out of that.
Yeah.
You can't make a living at that.
Yeah.
So, I would love to be a ballerina. Actual ballerinas do not have to jump lower so I can keep up.
Yeah.
If you can't cut well, if you can't cut fast, if you can't get decent material, it's going to be very hard to do it by cutting stuff you like and selling it out to clients. So building a repair business, you can be a gem cutter and you can make a really good living. And people were lined up outside Tony Lloyd Reese's office, like literally lined up, to the point where he would tell people, go down and get a cup of coffee. I will not touch your stone until you leave because you can't stand here and watch me do it. He had more clients than he could handle. And I looked at that and thought, I want to do that. It's what I do. But I know people who love repair work and love recutting, and they love it. People break a stone. They've got to go into a mounting. They've got a mounting that needs to be filled. People like me, that's not work that I enjoy. I'm dyslexic. I find it deeply stressful. If you can do that, there's always work for it. So there's lots of ways to be a gem cutter without hopping on a plane to someplace and hoping you find good things and can bring them back and find people to buy them. over time, as you get more confident, now you will find clients, you will see what they like. If you're working, doing repairs and recuts, if you're working with stores, you'll find out what they want. And you'll get people who say, oh yeah, I will absolutely give you money to buy rough and cut for the store. Totally legit.
Yeah.
But doing it the way I did it requires, I mean, I figure it was 200 to 300 grand invested before I started making money at it, and
Yeah.
3 years of time of not making an income.
But like you said, that's just one path, because like I didn't do anything like that.
No, most people don't.
Yeah, and I mean Victoria didn't do anything like that either, and I mean most people.
Victoria really did it the hard way.
Yeah, but I mean, but she, yeah, she did an apprenticeship, but she, we haven't until recently been in the business of putting a big money into rough, and we've been
Right.
in the business for a little bit of time now, and
Exactly. There's lots of ways to do it
yeah,
that don't involve doing that. And that's why when I see questions, well, how can I go overseas and buy rough and make a living as a gem cutter? Like, you can go overseas and buy rough. You can make a living as a gem cutter, but you may not be able to do both of those things
yeah.
together.
And I mean, most of the time, you don't always need to do that. Like, there's other people,
Right.
like even when I talk to the cutting factories here, there's two kinds of factories in Bangkok. One kind is for hire, and the other kind is for sale. Like you put an order in, they fulfill the order. You don't buy
Right.
rough and give it to them. And when I talk to those guys, and I'm like, why don't you go to Africa or go to Burma or go to Vietnam and get rough? And they're like, well, why would I do that when those guys come here,
Exactly.
and those guys go to Tucson too? Maybe not the same guys, but
Exactly.
some guys are going to Tucson from Africa or from Burma, and I've seen people in Bangkok that I've seen vending in Tucson. I'm like, oh, there you are, you're here
I
too.
have gone to Sri Lanka and been told, all our stuff is ready for Tucson. It's all packed. Like, it's in
Yeah,
Bangkok waiting to be shipped out. So, yeah, I mean, you can go to the source and find out it's all on its way to Tucson.
yeah,
I mean, I buy from Matt Milstead. I buy from John Garso. I buy from Farouk. Um, I buy sometimes from Steve. There are people I don't buy from because I don't think it's value for money, but those four I do. And, again, if you build relationships with people, you can call and go, what you got? I have people who call me and say, I've got a client who needs XYZ. Do you happen to have it? And if I do, yeah, I'll sell it to you. That's not a problem.
yeah,
Because I want everybody to eat. But again, traveling to gem producing countries is wonderful. It's awesome. It's a great experience. But you can separate that from buying rough that makes you money, which you can do quite comfortably in Tucson or Denver.
yeah, yeah. Um, I had a question that was unrelated to what everyone's typing, and I can't remember. But anyway, oh yeah, I always thought if I lived in America still, that recutting, because I love recutting, and Victoria loves recutting too. I think for anyone who hasn't tried it, it's such a cool way to see, before and after. Like when you look at rough, it's rough. It's like has infinite possibilities. When you look at a cut stone, it's finished and it's as good as the cutter could do it. And
Yeah.
then when you are able to take it and directly compare before and after and see the final to the final,
I
it's a
love doing
yeah,
that.
it's a good feeling. But like as you said, if you hate dealing with those customers because that's a special kind of stress, or if you're dyslexic and you're going to mess it up, or the stress is just too high, yeah, maybe it's not a good thing. But
Like, I buy to recut from my own inventory all the time. That's how I get the bulk of my sapphires and almost all of my tanzanite. Uh,
yeah,
and I like it. I know what the color is going to be. In the
yeah,
case of sapphire, it's often already been heated,
yeah,
which is not I mean, I heat a lot of things, but sapphires are outside my abilities. They're outside the abilities of my furnace. But you can get great stuff. And again, then somebody got paid to cut it in a gem producing country. And I think that's important to remember. And I
yeah,
get very annoyed when I see people doing, oh, well, they're good with the Tanzania export situation. Well, the locals are ruining the rough. Like, dude, it's their material. They live there. It's grown there. Bugger off. Now, I might not feel good about putting one of their tanzanites in my inventory directly. I wouldn't for the most part, but I did a talk for the Canadian Gemological Association. It turned into an article for Gem World that I think is on my site on the value of precision cutting to gems. And I put out some things of like, I cut some pretty heinous stuff early on. It was not good. And it was, it was precision cut by a North American cutter. And I've got some comparisons of locally cut stuff to precision cut stuff where the locally cut stuff is way better. I mean, there's stuff that you can get that there's some guys on JamPeg machines killing it.
Yeah.
Killing it.
No, it's true. I mean, our best factory here, sometimes, honestly, I can't tell the difference between their stuff and my stuff other than a few small details like how they've done the girdle or whatever. Like the quality is, it's up there. It doesn't matter how they got there.
Right. So, there's nothing wrong with local people eating. I may want to recut that piece, but I'm super happy that somebody got paid to cut it. And I get the advantage of it's already oriented. It's already been heated. I know, particularly tanzanite, man, you've got no idea what it's going to look like when you're done. You can make a wild ass guess, but you cut a piece of tanzanite rough that's kind of brown with some greenish and yellow in it, and you're hoping what you get when it comes out of the oven. Where here, it's already done. It's good. I've selected for the color. Now I can recut it.
Yeah. So it's easy. And recutting is fast. Cutting from rough takes longer than recutting. Yeah. And most of the work's already been done. You just have to, as you said, give it a haircut. I just like
doing it to my designs for me. And I do have clients I recut for. I've got some really nice pieces upstairs. But the clients I recut for know that it's going to be my design. I'm not going for low loss. If you want super low loss, there's other people who do it. Rex Grove does an amazing job at super low loss performance cuts. He's awesome. He's way better at that than I would ever be. I'm going to cut it to my design. I'm going to give you what I think is the best value out of that gem. There's some things like this is well enough cut. I can't add value to it. I'm sending it back. But they know that I've got like a 3-month lag. And right now, like I've been cutting a lot of smaller stuff and a lot of things that I just kind of want to knock out. But I lost my husband 2 months ago, and I'm not touching somebody's 30-carat rubellite. I'm not.
Yeah.
I will do that when I feel like I'm in full possession of my faculties.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's I like this question. This is a funny question. So this is from Dennis McGilvery. He says he's also dyslexic and found recently a high percentage of watchmakers are too, oddly enough.
Really?
I guess so. So do you find your creativity is because of or in spite of dyslexia?
I don't know because I've never not been dyslexic. So I truly don't know.
Well, have you met a lot of other dyslexic people?
Yeah, we tend to be, I worked in Bell Labs for a long time. You meet a lot of people on the autism spectrum and you meet a lot of dyslexics. And we all tend to be a little off center in some ways. One of the things that took me a while, because I was a girl going to school I was born in 61. I was born female. And so I got tracked out of math and science because I got wrong answers. So my degrees are in medieval and classical literature. I got tracked into languages. When I got to Bell Laboratories, and I got there as a technical writer, and I started working in the lab, I'm like, oh, I'm actually good at this. Nobody wants me designing bridges. You do not want me doing stress calculations for bridges. You don't want me doing any of that because I see numbers wrong. But I was actually good at computers and I could work it, but back in those days, so I had to relearn into my 30s because I didn't know I was dyslexic. I just knew I was bad at math and bad at science. So it's been a great experience of discovering what I'm actually good at, which is not what I was told I was good at.
Okay.
And that's been a lot of fun in pretty much every area. Um, I was working on an MBA in University of Edinburgh, and the Edinburgh School of Business, excuse me, and doing the finance course. And of course, Tom and I shared an office, and he's a mathematician, and I'd be sitting there working through the finance stuff, and I'd turn around and go, I'm getting the right answer, but I don't understand how it works. And he'd go, right. Okay. And he'd explain it sometimes. And sometimes he'd say, you need about 2 years of background maths for this. So just keep getting the right answer. I keep plugging in and getting the right answer, but I can't explain to you how it works. Okay, that's fair. So I missed a lot of background. And it's been an intriguing experience figuring out how both how I can learn things in ways that my brain can accept it, and how I can undo a lifetime of being told I was bad at things I'm actually pretty good at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, I saw Brian Webe said he's also a dyslexic gem cutter. Victoria is also a little bit of a dyslexic gem cutter. So who knows? I also, Victoria and I are also both left-handed gem cutters, and I'm always on the lookout. Yeah, I have this theory because I think almost somehow in Bangkok or in Thailand in general, there's like an overwhelming amount of left-handed people, and I always notice this. I don't know why. I don't know if this is statistically true, but like literally every server in every restaurant is left-handed, and they're, and I'm
Oh,
always like, I wonder if there's more left-handed gem cutters. And every time I do a survey on the internet, it's not true at all. But I just sort of have this idea that maybe in the whole world there is more left-handed cutters, or whatever. It's probably not true, but maybe there is more
yeah.
dyslexic gem cutters. I know uh, Sarah Steele in Whitby, who's a gem cutter. She told me before she thinks every gem cutter is somewhere on the autism spectrum. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to be a gem cutter because your brain just isn't. I don't know if that's true either, but it's an interesting thought. So my last big question for you as a professional gem cutter in the world, you mentioned this, you talked on this a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper. What do you think are the skills that somebody needs to become a pro cutter? Whether they're not a cutter now, or maybe they're a hobbyist cutter, or they're just learning, because I know there's a lot of gem cutters in the world, and especially in America, who are they're hobby cutters or they're competition cutters, and they're great cutters, but they're not buying and selling and having to do the business side of things to make it work for income. So what does it take to transition or to get to that point where you're doing that in your
Well,
in
one of the things that there's a couple of things. One is, can you be fast and accurate? Because if it takes you 10 hours to cut the thing, and the thing you're cutting in 10 hours is a 2 carat aquamarine, you will not make a decent hourly wage. You just won't. So can you cut fast enough to make it worth your time?
mm-hmm.
Can you cut accurately? Can you get good meat points? One of the things is, you know, can you relax your standards? Because my clients are not going to pay for a 200,000 polish. My clients are not going to pay for meat points good to 20. They're really not going to pay for meat points good to 10. So my stuff is beautiful. My meat points are pretty good and my polish is great, but I would not submit it for competition because old men in flannel would laugh at me. And for some people that they can't let it go and they'll rework it. And my second ever gem, I misindexed in the pre-polish and I was almost in tears. And I called Hubert and he came over, he went, yeah, that's a mistake. Make 7 more. It needs to be symmetrical and attractive. And that I think set me up for success because I do, like, I work late at night. Sometimes I'll misindex something and I can go in and it's why one of the reasons I love the dominatrix is if I make a little mistake, I can run it up. I don't have to recut the whole thing. So can you relax your standards and kind of roll with what you get and understand what's important to your clients, which may not be what's important to your little gem cutter heart. And the other thing is, can you do or outsource all of the administrative stuff? Like my people are like, oh my God, you're still posting on Instagram the week Tom died. I'm like, oh no, I pay someone for that. Like, I do not do my own Instagram. And it publishes to my Facebook. So I have somebody doing that part of my social media because I don't want to do it and I won't. Tom did my photography for a lot of years. He taught me how to do my own. And we got the little gem light box because those are his lights. I am not clever enough to work with his lights. So we had to find a way that I could do it. I do my own bookkeeping, but I don't do my own accounting. I do my own sales, but again, somebody does my social media. So probably 2/3 of my time is spent being the business side of it. You know, it's like today I am the shipping department. Yesterday I was the sales department, which is why today I am the shipping department. You just got to be prepared for that, because if you're running it as a business, it's business. And the other thing, and this is really important, you have to make commitments and give quotes and stick to the quotes and meet your deadlines. Because if your clients can't rely on you, they won't use you. And it doesn't matter how pretty your stuff is. You're probably selling to people who are also in business. And if you're selling retail, you're probably selling to somebody who's getting engaged and they need the thing. You know, they've got a birthday coming up. And I see a lot of people don't do that. They like, if I tell people what it's going to cost, that's the most it will cost. And I'll say, like, if I don't get quite the yield I thought I was going to get, or I might lower the price, but I will never raise the price. I've given you what the highest price is. I've told you when you're going to get it. And if there's a problem, I will call you and tell you there's a problem. It's basic customer service. Mm-hmm. And I find that lacking in a lot of people. I go, well, you know, it's going to cost about this. No, tell them what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
Give them a real honest to God price. And sometimes you lose money on things. Sometimes the piece isn't as nice as you thought it was going to be. Sometimes I've had stuff just split. And I've cut it and I've put it into inventory for less than the rough cost me because I didn't get what I thought I was going to get. That's how it works. It has nothing at all to do with how much time I spent or what I paid for the rough or how I feel about it. It has to do with what it's worth at the end of the day. And hopefully I make money on more stuff than I lose money on.
Hopefully, yes. Okay, so that goes into another question that somebody asked, and you sort of briefly mentioned the gem guide, but somebody said, you know, what's the best source for wholesale and retail pricing these days when you can't travel to shows? Like, how do you figure out Gem Guide?
Gem Guide.
If you're in North America, because for us in Bangkok, the Gem Guide doesn't
if you're in North
work.
America. If you're not in North America, I have no freaking idea.
So you're looking at the Gem Guide, you're seeing what they're saying this should be worth, and you're kind of around that price.
I definitely base on Gem Guide for my wholesale, and I found that, you know, when I've sold in Germany and Switzerland and the UK, that pricing looks very affordable to people. So I've never gotten pushback there, but I have not traveled to Asia to sell.
Yeah, well, I will just break the news to you. The Gem Guide is really expensive here.
I'm sure.
We were using the Gem Guide. I was teaching gemology for a really brief moment, and one of the classes they were teaching was using the Gem Guide as a model to just basically get numbers from. And they would kind of give a disclaimer, like we'd learn a formula for figuring things out, and then they'd kind of give this disclaimer like, these are fake numbers that don't work here, because they are. I mean, those numbers don't mean anything in Bangkok. And I never knew, like, because I never really did much business in America when I lived there. I didn't know if actually people really do use those numbers, or if that is just sort of a made up figure. But I guess that's true. If you're using them, you're doing business. You're still here.
I'm still here.
So okay.
And it's a guide for me as well. Can I make money at that price? Because if I can't, I shouldn't buy that rough, or I shouldn't cut that stuff.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's actually a really good point for anybody who's been asking how to get into it, because of course the hardest question to answer for me as a teacher and for anybody who's trying to figure it out, how do you know how much to pay for rough if you don't know how much you can sell it for? And if you don't have any customers, you don't know how much you can sell it for because you haven't
right.
sold. So it's like this sort of endless loop. Like, how do I get a job if I don't have a car? Like, I can't get a job if I don't have a car,
Yeah,
whatever. I can't get a car if I don't have a job. Um, so yeah, maybe the Gem Guide is a good place to start if you're
yeah.
in the right
I've found it
market.
very useful. And I have actually given old gem guides to some of my wholesale clients to say, when the guy walks in with a tray of stuff that doesn't have prices on it, it's all mysterious, you can look it up. And you can use that as well, which has saved some friends from getting kind of ripped off. So
Okay.
I think it's a good thing overall. I did see in the question that the impact of cut on colored gems, that was the one I did as a talk for CGA, and then turned it into an article for Richard Drucker. And yeah, I mean, it comes back to the thing is worth what it's worth. And if I cut it pretty, it's going to be prettier. And if it's prettier, it's worth more. But it is not inherently worth more because I cut it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my mommy might pay more because I cut it, but I don't expect my clients to.
Yeah.
So if it is not, if it's not inherently a prettier thing, it doesn't matter that I cut it.
Yeah. Well, I heard, you said that in your talk in Tucson last year, and that really impressed me because, there's a lot of American cutters who don't
Yeah,
think,
no.
they think they have a different model, and for it's a tricky one for me because, we're in Bangkok. We can't price ourselves as if we're Thai. You know what I mean? We
Right.
will not pay our bills that way.
Yeah, you are.
So for us, we are charging more because we're doing a different kind of service, but at the same time we don't really do business in Thailand for that reason. We can't.
Right.
When I first moved here, I told people my prices and they laughed at me, and I was just like, oh, okay, that's not going to work. We have to do something different. And we found our little niche here for that pricing. But I think if I went back to America, it'd be awesome because I think the prices could like go up.
Right. Your rent would also go up.
Yeah,
So
the rent
there's
would
the,
also
the
go up
balance.
too,
But there's the difference between how fast does something sell, which is often a marketing issue, and how much does it sell for. I don't expect my stuff to sell for more because I cut it. But done right, it'll sell faster if you attach my name to it. So
Mhm.
the fact that I cut it offers a marketing value to my clients that they can use. And in fact, I need to start getting thinking I need to get off at 10 because I have an 11
Sure.
o'clock
No problem.
gem show. But, you know, as a gem cutter, our stories as humans, our stories of cutting, we can show the process of the stone. That's all got marketing value. But honestly, like I would totally pay more for Victor Two's love stones. I would. I would because it's Victor, right? But I love you, man. But I'm not going to pay more for yours.
Yeah.
There's a very limited number of people who can slap their name on something and charge more. I don't actually believe that slapping and I'm an American cutter. It, that it feels kind of like the R word to me. And it's setting up like I don't cut better than everybody in Thailand. I don't. I don't cut better probably than most of the cutters in Thailand. I cut differently, but I'm not going to set myself up in competition that way. I'm going to charge what I can charge fairly in my market. And if people can use my pictures, my story, an event with me in their store or over Zoom with their clients to market better, to sell faster, there's value there.
Yeah.
But I don't think people should pay more just because it's me or just because my butt's in a chair in Vancouver.
Yeah. That being said, though, you did win a Spectrum Award that then got bought by the Smithsonian. So I just wanted to
Well, the
point that.
Smithsonian does not, right. The Smithsonian does not buy. It was
Really?
requested by the Smithsonian, and I was overjoyed because I would have tucked something behind a toilet in the women's washroom to say I had a piece in the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
So
But so I'm just saying you're
Yeah.
doing pretty good on the quality control side because somebody's, the Spectrum Award is already hard enough, and then having a piece in the Smithsonian, that's pretty cool. Not very many people
It,
can say that
not gonna
they've done that.
lie, it never stops being pretty cool.
I think, I don't know, does Victor Tuzlakov have a stone in the Smithsonian? I think he
I don't know.
might, but
I think
if
he might.
maybe his is next to yours, so maybe you're, not to say, but it's just like you're hanging out together.
Victor, what Victor does, he showed me some of his stuff in Tucson, and I literally started to cry. Like he pulls these gems out, and I started to weep looking at his stuff because, it's like Dalen Hargrave's stuff, man.
Yeah.
Everybody can do basic bitch fantasy cutting. Dalen's an artist,
Yeah.
and
I
I've
would,
actually
I
got.
would, I plan to pay someday. I want a Dalen Hargrave in my collection. Like,
I just commissioned a Dalen Hargrave to represent myself and Tom.
yeah,
So he's working on that for me.
cool. I
Yeah.
can't wait. Are you going to show it off to the world, or is
I
it
will,
going to be,
yeah.
okay, I want to see
Yeah.
that.
Tom's a bear and I'm a lion, and so it's a bear and a lioness together with a white crow that's got some significance to us. So yeah, I'll get it in American cutter time, right? Like
Yeah,
I don't know when I'll see it, but yes, pretty much everything I saved. I'm not doing a funeral. Go in a Dalen to get a piece carved.
that's cool. That's a good way
So
to do
there's
it.
Victor. Victor is an artist. I'm a technician with a great sense of sensibility. Like I have good artistic sensibility, but I am not an artist. Dalen's an artist, Victor's an artist, and I can do nothing but admire that.
Okay. I think that is an absolutely excellent place to end this conversation. Lisa, thank you so much. It has
Thank
been
you.
a
This was so much fun.
blast. Let me put up my final little share screen for anybody that isn't following you already. You're on Instagram, you're
I,
on the web, you've got a Facebook, and somewhere between there you can get on your mailing list, which I have always
you
found.
can get on my mailing list from the website, and I sell on a Reddit channel called Shiny Precious Gems.
Yep.
So if you go to Shiny Precious Gems on Reddit, you'll see a bunch of my stones there most days.
I like that Reddit. I'm on that one just to watch and enjoy, and there's always good energy in that group. So
It's a fun group.
yeah, Reddit has been a surprisingly weird place for gemstones for me, but it's there. It's
Me
like a
too.
whole other home. So
It's
yeah,
been great, and
so
particularly in the pandemic, it's been amazing.
yeah, cool. Well, Lisa, good luck. Thank you so much for the time,
Oh, well, thanks
and
everybody for spending your Sunday with me. And thanks, Justin, for inviting me. This was
yeah,
great.
it's been a blast. Well, I hope, I'm definitely planning on, COVID willing, that I'm going to be in Tucson next year. I'm in, I'm part of the Somewhere in the Rainbow next year, or this year
Oh,
that got
nice.
moved to next year. So I'm going to be there. I hope you're there, and we
I will
can
be there.
have dinner again, and,
Yes. And
sit and,
if you make it up to Vancouver, the guest room's right by the
oh yeah,
workshop.
no,
So
we're coming. I haven't told Victoria yet, but yeah,
I have a
we're gonna
guest
be
room and a
there.
boat, so you're all good.
As soon as you said sauna, I was like, okay, we'll be there. We'll be there. Cool. Well, catch you later. Have fun,
Thanks,
and
guys.
see you soon.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.